Chapter 7, The Tanker Episode. At first, Ashraf's boat blocked our view, but a memorable sight soon appeared. There was Leo, standing at the boat's wheel and guiding it to an expert stop against the dock's rubber bumpers. And there was Rookie, standing at his side with a hooded Falcon perched on a leather gauntlet on his right arm. What an image! Gelly and I jumped out from the foliage and hooted our welcome. The two men were tied up and laying like sausages in the back of the boat. One was Choi Tom, the other was Khalil, the Omani falconer. We took the two sausages into the jungle and deposited them along with the three others that we had. I queried Ashraf again, and he told me there were two more guards out there with flint. Gelly and I retrieved rifles for the boys from the patrol boat, plus all the ammunition clips we could find and carry, and the four of us headed around the cove. Gelly and I needed to attend to Flint, but were really anxious to first hear a quick version of what had transpired at the oil tanker. Leo said, "Well, at first light, Rook and I headed here to the cove and saw this boat departing with Choi Tom at the helm and the falconer standing next to him. He held a falcon. A big lead box was on the deck next to a couple of similar boxes in the back. Two guards saluted as they departed, and they took the path we're on now. We headed toward Choi's house, and at the cliff edge we saw an enormous oil tanker coming over the horizon and the patrol boat speeding to intercept it. We ran back to the dock thinking we'd chase after them on your boat, Uncle Amerigo. But when we saw the second patrol boat sitting at the dock with its bow machine gun, well, it didn't seem like such a good idea anymore." Rookie added, "But fortunately the pirates hadn't bothered your boat or even seen the two underwater sea scooters in our chest. They're a generation ahead of the lake scooter Leo used against the Spiradrilla daisies. He improved the heat pump's electrical output and raised the motor's power tenfold. He also added a weapons compartment for carrying a spear gun and a flare gun. We hauled the scooters out, made a quick plan, put on our scuba gear, and headed out. I tell you, I was a whole lot happier being below the surface than I would have been on your boat, invisible to that 50 caliber gun." Now Leo couldn't wait to get the story out and said, "We had to stick our heads up every couple of 100 meters to make sure we were on course. And when we were close, we saw the falconer stand and the falcon land on his arm. Then what looked like a seagull plopped kind of clumsily into the box on the deck. When Rookie and I reached the patrol boat, we split up. I took the port side, and Rook swam around to the starboard, and each of us surfaced close to the boat. They couldn't see us, but we could hear their conversation. We were lucky they needed to speak English because, being from Oman, Khalil spoke only Arabic and English. Choi Tom had just opened up a radio channel to the tanker's bridge and told the first mate to go look at the tail of the stern deck. He said he'd find a new hole bored all the way through its overhang. When the mate came back on the radio, he said he'd seen it and asked what was going on. Choi said he knew the tanker captain kept $1 million cash in his safe, and he wanted it lower down in a box so he could pick it up. Well, we heard the mate's howling laughter loud and clear, but Choi broke in and said if he didn't see a box of money being lowered within 15 minutes, the mate and the captain would have some ugly news for the ship's owner. The aft engines would be pierced and the hole would go through the hull, leaving the tanker immobile and taking on water. If the money wasn't lowered 5 minutes later, he'd bore a new hole through a compartment every 5 minutes, and the oil would flow out. The crew would be swimming in a massive oil spill, and the $120 million tanker would drop to the bottom of the sea. Rookie came back and said, "That triggered our action. Leo made a low, rhythmic tapping on the port side. Choi asked Khalil if he heard it. I couldn't hear Khalil's response, but I did hear Choi move forward toward the port side. I climbed the side rope ladder, aimed my spear gun at Choi, and ordered him to freeze and lay on the deck. He turned, looked confused. I sighted the spear at his guts, and he decided to lay on his belly rather than be skewered. But Khalil said strange words to his falcon and pointed at me. It shook itself, made its own sound, and the seagull rose on his legs. But, yes, Ricky said with a triumphant grin. I just happened to have brought along that same laser bat I'd used on that python at the Eiffel Tower. I reached over, lit it up near the seagull's head, and immediately turned it into some kind of a worm or eel with rotary blades in its mouth. Khalil and the falcon both went silent. I shouted to Leo to come on board, and we secured Choi and Khalil in the back. Oh, that ET was an ugly and fierce thing now, so we shut it up in its box and pushed it into the back where the other couple of boxes were. I imagine they were 2 more ETs that they were going to probably use for sinking the tanker. After we hauled our water scooters on board, I radioed the oil tanker that the pirates had been disabled, and Leo fired up the patrol boat. The Falcon sat on the back of my seat for a while, and then it seemed to decide I was the boss. So I stripped off the Falconer's leather protector, and this feathered dude is now my friend. Chapter 8, Hunting Fund. The 4 of us jogged to the far side of the cove, entered the thick foliage, and followed a rough jungle path up the hill. In only minutes, sunlight shone through, and it indicated a clearing ahead. We left the path, entered the foliage, and approached with care. A Quonset hut, about 20 meters long and 10 wide, was in the center of the clearing. It had a closed door and 2 closed windows on the near end and 3 windows on the side visible to us. A guard appeared from the far end. He strolled around the hut, and when he completed his circle, another guard emerged and they chatted. Still, no sign of Fund. We had rifles, but would have been sitting ducks if we'd entered the clearing. Our goal was to capture Fund and not die trying. Ricky made his way through the jungle to check out the far end of the Quonset, and he returned a few minutes later saying, "No sure sign of Fund there, but something's going on." One of the guards was on a radio. Then someone in a white hazmat suit walked from the queue toward him. They seemed to talk, and the hazmat guy went back in. It was probably Fund, we figured. We needed a plan, and I wanted to know more about the situation. I wanted to see what was on the far side of the queue hut, and made my way through the jungle in the other direction. But I tripped on a root and crashed. The bruises convinced me that staying together was more important than getting more information. As I was going back and I neared them, Gally said, "The guards just ran into the queue. They're rolling out some contraption." Well, we had no clue what it was, and before we could talk it over, the hazmat guy wheeled out a wagon with a dark metal container. He shoveled something that looked like dirt into the contraption, patted it with his shovel, and pulled a long lever, and then the thing convulsed. A firestorm struck where I'd fallen minutes earlier. Something burned through green foliage, cracked branches sizzled, and a smoke ball erupted. In the clearing in front of it, stones jumped, grass popped, and smoke rose. The 2 guards ran forward and fired into the spot where I'd fallen. The contraption convulsed again, and this time burning rain fell in the mouth of the path. Intense sizzling and popping followed, and large tree branches crashed around us. The guards sprayed bullets in the same space. Hey, all this was too close for comfort. If they spotted us, we'd fry. Gally called out, "It's action time, fellas!" Ammer, give cover and the three of us will dash for the far end of the Quonset. We all fired a couple of volleys, and then the three started running. I gave continuous fire cover and hit one of the guards in the leg. Their firing stopped as the second guard helped his colleague retreat, but Hazmat, well, that guy launched burning rain toward the trio. A popping, erratic crater formed about 3 meters behind them. I fired at the contraption and the Hazmat retreated behind the queue's far end. I joined the trio at the near end while Leo gave me cover. We tried to see into the windows, but they'd been painted. Galley extended his arm and threw open the door. A burst of gunfire came through, but then it went quiet after he held his own rifle out in the doorway and let off a couple of rounds. Then more bullets were fired, and these came straight through the thin aluminum wall we were standing behind. I jammed in a new clip, stepped to the door, and fired until it was empty. Hazmat wasn't visible. I looked in. Right in front of me was a row of cloning containers like those the Rocky Mountain Empire gang had used in Boulder. Then I saw a missile coming at my face. And it passed, and I realized it was a metal bird. And then it rose in the distance. I ducked aside as 3 more flew out, then 3 more. I'd see something like this once in a bat cave, a real bat cave, in the early evening. More shots then came from the far end, but our bigger worries were now in the air behind us. That first bird, it arced. It dove toward us, and then it raised toward the sky. A loud splat came from the Quonset wall behind us, and an opening the size of a baseball erupted inside a smoke ring. That bird joined the other 6. Boy, I knew they didn't need pinpoint accuracy to hit one, if not all of us. If we ran into the Quonset, we'd get cover, but we also might get a speeding bullet in the gut. I looked over and saw a rookie. He was removing a leather pouch from his waist, and I hadn't seen that before. He knelt, opened its top, and put his arm inside, and he removed the Falcon. It fluttered and perched on his forearm. He took a quick step in front of the Quonset door, pointed in, and called out loudly, "Cree! Cree!" The Falcon leaped off its arm, but it didn't fly inside where Rookie pointed. It flew like a rocket, but in the opposite direction. On its way, the Falcon almost ripped off Leo's ear with a wing feather. It flew straight at the 7 metallic seagulls, and it circled them. Then it circled them again. And then it dove straight toward us with his 7 screaming monsters in a line right behind. The ferocious power heading toward us was terrifying. It was like looking down the barrel of a 50 caliber machine gun. I thought I was about to meet my maker when that Falcon screamed at me, but he passed my shoulder and went in the open door. The metal monsters followed, and they sounded just like small jets. Leo, Galley, and Rookie had wisely hit the ground. I was the only fool standing, and that let me see the bird's target. They were headed toward the hazmat suit. Hazmat avoided being turned into a hamburger, though. He flashed around the corner, and a few heartbeats later, engine noise came from the far side of the Quonset. I yelled to the others to not go into the Quonset. Radioactivity isn't as bad as a bullet, but it can still be deadly. We sprinted to the far side of the Quonset, but arrived just in time to see a twin propeller plane reach takeoff speed. Fun's goatee was visible through the plane's window. He pulled back on the stick, wagged his wings, and powered to a higher altitude and then out of sight. We'd lost him, and we just have to live with it. After jogging to the Quonset's far side, we saw the 2 guards had laid down their weapons and were sitting in the shade at the edge of the jungle. We found the wounded one could walk, and we marched them back to the cove and tied them with the others. After relieving Lola Bell from jail duty, I found the Malaysian police in Kuching. They were not at all optimistic about finding Flint, but said they'd look for him and would dispatch a boat to pick up Troy Tom and his gang. Chapter 9, Wrap Up. Leo and Rookie walked to Troy's house and returned with lunch fixings for us and the captives. As we waited for the police, we ate, sat on the dock, cooled our feet in the water, and were overseen by the Falcon sitting quietly on Rookie's shoulder. Leo and Rookie filled in Lullabelle about their tanker operation and what had just happened at the warehouse. Then we swapped stories and answered questions. Galley complimented Rookie on handling the Falcon and saving our butts. Rookie admitted he was scared it might not work, but said that bird came through big time. With just those 2 words, he read my mind and targeted Flint. Who knew what the sounds cree, cree could do for you, eh? Galley replied, well, that bird's our hero. It not only saved us from the ETs, but it also saved us from the radiation and the bullets we might have caught when chasing after Flint. Leo continued the discussion by asking, hey, can anybody explain where those ETs came from and why their poops were radioactive bombs? Galley answered, circumstances argue the ETs did originate on the Borisov interstellar comet. I believe lab analysis will show they survived the burning fall through our atmosphere because they're composed of hafnium. It's a rare element on Earth used when temperature-resistant metal is needed, such as like in rockets or in light bulb filaments. You've probably never heard of it because it's mostly found inside another mineral called zirconium and is rarely more than a 5% concentration there. Before I can continue here, can you guess how this South China Sea operation and your Blue Marble Defender success in preventing the pandemic in Europe are connected? Leo said, connected, eh? Well, this and the Orient Express to Denmark both involved the sea and unscrupulous ship captains. Galley said, yep, that's right. But they share one more thing, and that's Copenhagen. Niels Bohr, the famous scientist, gave hafnium its name because his Danish team discovered it, and hafnium was the ancient Romans' name for today's Copenhagen. Leo was fidgeting and said impatiently, that's interesting, Pops, I got it, but now, why do those ETs have lethal radioactive poop? Kelly smiled and said, the ETs survived after their sea landing because their eel-like shape allowed them to swim on the surface where they could be found by Choi's pirate gang. They survived afterward thanks to the availability of their favorite food, uranium. Uranium is one of the Earth's most common elements and can be found inside rock almost everywhere. Hey, look, it's 500 times more common than gold, but its concentrations vary. For normal lower concentrations, touching the ore does no harm unless you have cuts on your hands. Uh-oh. I guess we should have washed our hands after we dug our way out of the bamboo cage, he said with a cheesy smile. Galley went on. The ET's rotary teeth allow it to chew rock and extract trace amounts. Indonesia has a uranium mine just over the border from Brunei, and since Lannon Island is nearby it must have a concentration high enough to keep the ETs alive. They digest the uranium, concentrating it, and eventually expelling it as radioactive poop. We'll need research to understand why a creature made of hafnium uses uranium for its energy. Now, for your unasked question, which I believe is, how many ETs are natural and how many were cloned? Well, without tests, we can't tell. Then Galley shouted over his shoulder toward the jungle, Khalil, what's the answer to that? A gruff answer came. The pirates recovered 4 ETs. We lost 1 when a fisherman shot it on a training mission, and Fund cloned 10. Thanks, Khalil, Kelly said, and then turning back. And thanks, boys, for putting up with the science lessons. When we're done talking, I'll make up for it by asking Amber the Hammer here to show you something more action oriented and fun. Like, how to take out a bad guy with a single punch. I gave a tip of the cap to show my agreement on the lesson and said, I'll gladly train you if you promise to use the skill only on bad guys and in desperate situations. Rookie was really interested. I'll pay close attention to Uncle Amerigo here because I'm really fried at Fund escaping again. I just know he'll keep spreading evil until we nail him. He'll be even more famous among bad guys when the word gets around that he has methods pirates can use to blackmail governments and threaten big ships. Do you think we should mount an effort to find him? Maybe set a trap? Well, look, I said, yes, I agree, Rook. Let's keep him in our sights. I'll put word out to all my contacts. Rookie replied, okay. Now more questions. Why was Fun harvesting that radioactive guano he shot at us? He wouldn't have gone to all the trouble of gathering it just because we might walk down the path. He must have assumed we were still in the bamboo cage. And what was up with that catapult? I thought siege weapons went out of use when people stopped living in castles. Leo jumped in with an answer. You're right, bro. Fun didn't do it for us. Since big lead containers are expensive and difficult to handle, the guano must have been in his plan from the beginning, and he must have foreseen a big profit. I bet he was targeting somebody with deep pockets. His guano supply was big enough to take out a bridge, like, say, the bridge over Sydney Harbor, or it could destroy a tourist attraction like Sentosa in Singapore. Or he could have planned to offer it on the dark web to other enterprising evil people. He probably intended to sell the ETs he'd cloned to pirates who worked the Malacca Straits or the Philippine Island channels. With more money in hand, that skunk would probably have gone back to his real love, his love of killing people quietly with cigarettes, Leo said with a smirk. A voice came from the jungle behind us. It was Choi Tom's. A very good analysis, young Mr. Leo. I'll be telling the authorities the name of an Australian crime syndicate leader who is negotiating for the guano pile. His target was the Sydney Opera House. Gally turned and said, Thank you, Choi. Were we right on the other things we said? Why, yes, and I'm surprised at how much you inferred. Lolabelle turned and asked, Choi, why all the rush today? Would it not have been far safer for you and Fun to build a bigger gang and attack on separate days? Madame, you're right. We did take risks by aiming one small team at the tanker and another at Brunei, but pirates can't operate with impunity. Police have excellent methods of communication, many aircraft, and powerful boats. A pirate, blackmailer, or terrorist must strike quickly, escape, and hide before the authorities can respond. Lolabelle answered, I do see, and I do understand the world of crime looks different when seen from the criminal's point of view. Then Leo said, Pops, I'm still not clear on those shapeshifter ETs. They're confusing. My own eyes saw the flesh and blood earthbound Falcon teach and work with metal ETs from far away in the universe. But I don't get how that's possible. Do you? Gally replied, On Earth, lower order creatures evolved hardwired, instinctive behaviors and that they know right from birth. They know how to survive. Higher order creatures start life with some instincts, but they survive by learning and adapting after birth. If you assume that alien life evolved following the same paradigm, their behavior makes sense. They learn often from their parents, the first people they see. The set of shape-shifting ETs mimic seagulls because they were the first animate life they encountered after falling into the sea. Then Khalil back there taught the falcon to see the metal seagulls as birds and not, say, as inanimate airplanes or drones or something. He further taught the ETs how to overcome its instinct to attack seagulls and to teach them and how to execute on its own predatory skills. Well, I gotta say, Galley's explanation really helped Lola, Dell, and me because we didn't get it either. We were with Leo. I took a minute to turn it over in my mind before I called toward the jungle. Khalil, you were planning to train other pirates on how to deploy the ET seagulls that they were going to buy? Were you going to do that? Khalil replied in the same gruff voice. Yes. When Mr. Fun hired me, he told me to bring 10 additional falcons from Oman. I did so, and they are now being cared for by an attendant at the Kuching Zoo. I doubted it was possible to teach falcons to train alien metal birds to attack ships and people. You know, I may be the world's best falconer, and even I could succeed if I could succeed myself with one falcon. I'm not sure about pirates. Pirates are not known for patience and the willingness to practice and practice. I doubted I would even be able to teach them to handle the falcon. Never mind teach that bird to train ETs. But I must say I concede that after seeing how well your Mr. Rookie handled my falcon, Mr. Fun's plan may well have succeeded, and I too would have become rich, rich as I want and deserve. Leo said dismissively, oh, such overblown self-image and low-minded motivation. Tch. Rookie added. Anyway, I'm glad to know the other falcons are there in the zoo. We'll bring your falcon there rather than to the universities where the ETs will be studied. Just then, the police boat's powerful engines arrived from the distance. As we rose to prepare our boat Amelia for our return to Kuching, Rookie raised his index finger to halt us. He gave a smile and said, Pops, instead of going straight home, could we find some Birdman suits and take another hike up Kinabalu? And that's the end.